Today, I've got Ludi Lin on Asian Rebel Club. You've probably seen him in Mortal Kombat, Power Rangers, Aquaman, and so on. He is born in Fuzhou, China, moved to Hong Kong at 3, Australia at 9, and Vancouver at 17. So when people ask him, where are you from? The answer is basically, how much time do you have? This episode is part podcast, part comedy rehearsal, and part Asian identity breakdown. We are talking accents, code switching, childhood, Asian Americans versus Asians from Asia, and why some of us spend our whole lives trying to sound like we belong somewhere else. Ludi, welcome.
What's up?
Can you introduce to us a bit about yourself? And we're very curious to see also where the accent comes from.
Oh, for sure. What accent? I think everybody has an accent. My accent is Chinese because I was born in China. I was born
Your
in mainland
accent is
China.
not Chinese, Ludi. Your accent
This
is
is,
definitely not Chinese.
this is what I tell people because when people ask me the question, "Where are you from?" they usually mean like where my accent comes from or how come I sound like this, basically. And then I tell them I'm
Yeah,
from China, and nobody believes me because that's not the question they're asking. So very often
exactly.
people are asking the questions they're asking themselves rather than they're trying to get the answers from another person. They have all these assumptions, right? Whether I grew up in the
Yeah,
UK, whether I grew up in Australia, but I just tell them I'm from China,
yeah.
and sometimes I tell them this is actually the Chinese accent. It's just sometimes, when I tell them as a joke. Sometimes I go, well, in China, the people that are unable to learn like the the American accent or the British accent, we sent them overseas
Yeah.
for extra study, for extracurricular study. And that's why everyone here. That's why everyone here
Did
speaks
they
with a
believe it?
Chinese accent. When I go in China, we all actually speak like this. And then yeah,
Did they believe it?
and they're blown away. Yeah, totally. They're blown away.
It's so funny because sometimes it depends on the intention behind the question. They could be asking a person from the street of New York, and the person speaks like perfect American accent, and they'll be like, "Where are you from?" And if the guy was like, "I'm from New York," they're like, "No, where are you really from?" Because they want the person to say, "I'm from China." Yeah, Korea. But in your case, they're like, "Oh my gosh, like this person has like a amalgamation of like Western accent. Like, where is he actually from?"
Yeah. And I don't understand why really, because I feel like everyone just, speaks the accent or the language that they need to, that they grew up in. Of course, people in China don't need to talk to Americans, so they don't speak with an American accent. Yeah, they speak the way that Chinese people speak English and that we learn English. So I'm not sure why it comes as such a surprise. But accents are really interesting to me. The things between what
Yeah.
accents are considered attractive, what accents aren't considered attractive, how come some people try so hard to get rid of accents, some accents sound more educated,
Mm.
when really you're just trying to get your points across.
Yeah. What's your take on that topic? Obviously, like going back to a bit of your upbringing, I know that you said that you're born in China, but I know that you were raised in Australia, right? And then after that, you went to Canada. So you had quite a bit of journey. Where did you pick up your accent? Like, how did it form? Did it change over time? And did you
I'm
see people's
yeah.
perception of you change? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super curious about that too. I wish I could go back and see a tape of myself as a kid, like because in China, I'm sure as a kindergartner or I was there until I was 9 years old. So I must have said some
Mm.
words. And I remember like my aunts, my family, right? My aunts, my mom, when they teach me how to speak English, like hello was always hello, like hello,
Mm.
hello. And then I'm sure it's like, do you know "hello"? Like, people, yeah. Well, it's just the Chinese words for "hello." Like ha and luo, they're both like clams, aren't they? Like luo is a snail and ha is a clam, right? And Chinese people love seafood, so they teach it
Uh,
like,
Yeah, it's so funny. I spent the first 20 years of my life. And when I was starting to learn English, and we would like literally every single vowel, every single pronunciation, we would like write down the Chinese character. and then we want to like read. So it would just be like an English sentence, but we're actually reading the Chinese character because like we don't know whatever we don't know what's going on. We don't know the meaning of the words and etc. So I think that
Yeah.
Halo is probably from like that as well.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And it's just the way we speak it. Like, I remember, because I went back to China in 2012. I went to Beijing to work, and I was there for another 8
Yeah.
years, just traveling back and forth. And I remember being there, and some words I would say in English that people wouldn't understand, like Chinese people wouldn't understand because they pronounce it a different way. Like,
Yeah.
for example, the letter C, right? Like if I'm trying to find a building and I go like C 座, like, like
Yeah.
unit C, they wouldn't understand. They're like, 什么 C, 什么 C. And then I would say, oh, it's
But then, but then,
because they
but
say
then,
it
what
like,
were they saying instead?
they say it like say,
What?
because, yeah, they say say 座, say 座.
I think this is a Beijing thing, you know? Like, I think these people are just not very good at English. You will
I,
never
I,
find that in Shanghai.
I think they say say, A, B, say D.
Yeah, that's a Beijing accent. Like, yeah, like that is
Is it
their way
really?
of speaking
So yeah,
Mandarin. Yeah.
everything is just so regional,
Yeah.
and it just depends. Like they think when I say C that I'm mispronouncing the letter C, and who am I to say that they're
Yeah.
wrong? Because if I'm in Beijing, like I'm supposed to be speaking Beijing English. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know, Roman when you're in Rome, right? You do whatever Romans do.
Yeah, it depends on. It's a
If they
tool.
can't understand you, they
It's a
can't help
tool
you.
for the environment.
Yeah, for sure. So back to the question, I felt like I heard a little of an Australian accent, but it's not pure. When you went to Canada, or like, how did people perceive you when you're not speaking like 100% Canadian English, and like they're confused about who you are, etc. Did that happen?
Yeah, it definitely changed over time. I mean, it's still changing now, probably. I think as we grow, things
Yeah.
always change, and for me, I see language as just a tool. Like if I need to change it, I'll change it.
Mm,
If I need it for
mm,
a role, I'll definitely change it. I learned English in Australia, and then I got to Canada in the last couple of years of high school, and then I'm coming in, and I'm still like I really held on to my Asian identity. I had the full
yeah.
bowl cut when I came in to school. I was nerdy. I loved the video games. I loved anime, all the stuff that Asian kids come equipped with. And I had this thick mouth of Australian accent. And back then I mean, now it's in Vancouver in Canada, it's so metropolitan. Like it literally
Right.
is a melting pot of different cultures. So now if you go down the street, especially during FIFA time, like there's Aussies here, there's lots of Irish people, there's Norwegians here. Nobody's ever surprised at any accents really. And if
Hmm.
sometimes they go like, "Oh, where's that accent from?" They're really, I think before they were really like asking where you from, but now I'm starting to
Yeah.
suspect that it's just a pickup line. Do you know what I mean? It's just to
That's
say
so
that,
funny.
wow, that's interesting. But when I first got here, people definitely saw me as a weird Pokemon because I had the turtle head bowl cut and I spoke like with a thick Australian accent when I first came in.
Right. Yeah.
So I got bullied. I was bullied in Australia for not being able to speak English. And then when I came here, when I finally thought I grasped this language, I got bullied for speaking like a weird ass Australian in close to the North Pole in Canada. So I decided to get rid of it. So for 2 years in high school, I just spoke like I tried to speak like a Canadian or
Yeah.
American, just off of TV. I watched lots and lots of Simpsons. I would go to school like this, and then a lot of my Canadian friends wouldn't even know that I lived in Australia.
That's crazy. Okay, so if you were to do a switch, right? So let's just say talk. If you were to switch to Canadian accent right now, how would you talk?
I think it's more subtle than you actually think because I can start talking like a Canadian, and then you wouldn't
Okay.
necessarily notice because because I think it frames like whatever accent that you recognize me with, unless you
Yeah.
do something very, very obvious, like a regional accent. Unless I start talking like a New Yorker and I go,
Yeah,
"Hey,
yeah,
what are you doing? Like what? Hey, what are you doing? I'm walking here. Watch out!" Unless
yeah,
someone really
yeah,
puts on a
yeah.
thick accent. I think you just associate the accent with the person. So, like right now,
Mm,
I'm talking with a Canadian accent, and if I switch
yeah.
back into my just normally how I speak, actually, like the word normal has become very like gray area for me because I could go
Yeah.
back and forth between the accents very easily. These two, anyways, because I've spent a lot of time just living in them. So when
Right.
people ask me what my natural accent
Yeah.
is, it's either going to be, yeah, if I'm here, then I can go anywhere talking like this. I wouldn't have to think about it really. But
Mm,
if I were to go back to Australia, if I'm just walking around the street, like normally, I guess it's like a almost like a piece of clothing that I put on, but I don't have to decide every day. Like right now,
yeah.
my
Yeah.
default is this. But if someone were to be like, if you could you just put on your Canadian for the day? And I start talking like this all the time, it doesn't really affect me.
Interesting. Do you think that helped you to become a better actor? Or like, does that make you a natural? Because it feels like you're code switching very naturally. And I assume that is what actors do, right? I'm not an actor, so I won't know that.
Yeah, maybe code switching is a part of it, like, especially with accent. And also people behave differently when they switch accents. Like, if you really put on a very
Yeah.
posh accent, you're going to start behaving very differently. Do you know what I mean? It's like very it's au
Right.
it automatically you assume that personality. So, maybe it helps. I definitely think that different experiences, life experience, different, kind of different ways that a person has tried to assimilate into different settings, different cultures. It's a form of art in itself to be able to connect emotionally to
Right.
people from different areas of the world, different ways of life, and to be able to pass off as like one of their own to be accepted, you know? Essentially, that's acting. I think everyone has acted at
Yeah.
some point in
Yeah.
their life, right? If you've ever tried to get out of a speeding ticket, you've acted in your life. You just go, you know, the policeman goes, "Do you know why I stopped you?" You go, officer, I have no idea. Like, why? No way, really? The speed limit is only 60 miles an hour? I swear to God, I
Yeah.
thought this was the highway." So, I
I
think
usually just pay.
everybody
I'm
yeah,
just like
everybody
I'm bad at this. Yeah. But I think there's a little bit of a difference in the fact that like for example, if a person like grew up and this is like me and then they need to act to get out of certain situations, right, from time to time versus a person who's like identity like the acting becomes a part of identity just because you constantly need to switch environments, right? You see that in kids who needed to grow in different schools and needed to
uh,
like make different friends, and it's almost like
sure,
for them when they're switching that's just survival, right? Because they need to.
sure.
So like I felt like there's a little bit of a difference in these two.
Yeah, that's a good point. I suppose that's the difference between the different types of acting. Say, like, method acting has been getting a lot of attention in the last few years. And if you're Daniel Day-Lewis and you spend 7 years studying a character and becoming that character, and you're basically that character all the time, then that's kind of like, you know, the survival style where
Yeah.
you assimilate that as your identity. You feel comfortable and
Yeah.
natural in it all the time.
Yeah.
That's kind of method acting.
Yeah. This is a bit deeper psychological question that one thing I find is that when you have a core identity, right? You're like, this is me. And then you start to take on different roles, you can always come back to that. But then let's just say if
Uh-huh.
you grew up switching from different roles, then
Yeah.
what do you come back to?
But
Because
I
that,
but
that's
I
that's
also
you. Do you have something that you go back
yeah.
to?
I suppose okay, let's frame the question a different way. Like for you, when you go to Canada or anywhere else, how long do you have to spend there until you feel like this is a place I could live in, where you don't feel like I'm just visiting? Or do you always feel like a visitor?
Gosh, I spent like a number of years in Canada. I'm a Canadian
Yeah.
PR. I think it's a little bit different because I always felt like I had such a survival pressure in Canada. So
Uh,
like this is a bit about my own experience. Like I first went to California, right, as an exchange student. So when I was on campus and I didn't have any friends. So all I heard was English. And then the day before I was in China speaking Chinese. And then so
yeah.
when you're like having that switch and you're like, oh my gosh, like now I need to speak this language that I don't even master yet to even survive in this place, I don't even think that I had a moment where I was like, "Oh, I'm a visitor here." Like, all I felt was like, "I gotta be one of them. Otherwise, I'm not gonna even
That's
be able
exactly
to."
yes, I think that's exactly it. I think it's like that feeling of I've got to be one of them. I think that's the feeling of
Yeah.
your identity trying to switch. If your automatic thought is, "Oh my gosh, I have to be one of them,"
Mhm.
that's your identity going, "I need to add something
Yeah.
or change my identity or switch to a I have to assume a new identity." But
Right.
if your feeling is
Yeah.
constantly, "Oh my god, I've got to get out of here," then I think you're not assuming an identity. Then you have a core identity that you always want to return to. If all of your thoughts,
Gotcha.
all of your time was spent in I can't wait for the moment that this is over and I can go home, then that is your identity trying to return to your original identity, you know? But if your feeling is, oh my God, I've got to be one of
That
these
is
people, I can't stand
yeah.
up, then it's like, then it's your
Yeah.
identity going, okay, this is the time, like, it's the time, like, princess, step up, and you need to assume a new identity. So that's why when we're
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
I think when we're talking about Asian Americans, that's something to think about as well, because they're
Ye
born, bred,
yeah.
and told that they are American, Canadian, whatever country that they were born and grew up in. But if constantly they're being told that, no, you don't belong here, right? Then they're
Yeah.
constantly thinking, well, where am I supposed to go? If everyone keeps telling them, go back to your country when they have no country to return to, then
But they
automatically
don't
they're
have that.
lost and they're trying to they're
Yeah.
really trying to find an identity that they feel safe in. And I think that's it. Identity is just a house that you build for your ego to feel safe in.
Yeah. Wow. Ludi, you're such a psychologist. I feel like you should, I feel like that's your new career. You should consider that. Like, that is really good. I've never heard anybody saying that, but that makes a lot of sense. So, do you find that Asian Americans are more obsessed with the Asian identity than the actual Asians are? Like, so I guess, let me just give an example. I felt like there's positive obsession and there's negative obsession, right? Either of them is a relationship with this
Mm,
identity. So what I'm trying to say is like some of them might over identify with that and then only kind of stay in their own community. And some of them might like push it away because they don't want to have anything to do with it. But the fact that it still has power over them, and that's why they need to push it away, right? Because if you're truly indifferent with it, you don't care about it, right? Why would you care
yeah.
whether, you're like Asian or black or, whatever. So what's your take on that? Why do you think that it seems like they're more obsessed with Asian identity than actual Asians are? And do you
That's really
agree with it, by the
interesting.
way?
Wow. I think it's really interesting that you said that there's two types of obsessions. One, that you're negative and positive. And I guess I don't
Yeah,
try to look at things in a negative and positive way because they're just all subjective. Like something that's positive in one place could be so
yeah,
negative in another place. Do you know what I mean? That old story about the shoe salesman. Have you heard the story about this shoe salesman that gets sent to Africa to sell shoes to them?
yeah. And what happened?
Have you heard this story before? Where a shoe salesman from
No.
America is sent to Africa to sell shoes to the Africans, and then this is gonna get me cancelled. But this is a story I've heard. But to illustrate
Okay,
a
yeah.
point,
This is what you heard.
very completely fictitious story. That's probably someone told it in the 50s because it's got that kind of ring to it. But let's just say a shoe salesman is sent somewhere to sell shoes, and he gets off the flight, and immediately he's disappointed. And he goes in the country, he doesn't have much success. He goes home, and the boss asks him, "How was it?" And he goes, "It was terrible because nobody there wears any shoes. How am I supposed to sell anything to them?" Right? And then the boss goes, "All right, fine, we'll try another guy." So he sends another guy over, and the other guy gets there and he goes, "Oh my God, this is amazing. Nobody here has any shoes. I'm going to make a killing."
Maybe just like I'm not getting it, but like, isn't that the best case where like they don't actually have anything, and then you're selling them something that they don't even know that they need, and you're like the only person who's
Right? Because I mean,
doing
because
this?
you're
Like,
thinking
why is that
about
a
it
bad
from
thing?
such a positive perspective because either someone goes there and goes, "No one here wears any shoes. How am I going to sell anyone any shoes?" Right? Because it's not their habit to wear any
Right.
shoes. And then another person goes, "Oh my God." It's a great opportunity because no one here even knows that shoes exist. They're gonna love it. Do you know what I mean? So it's just a matter of perspective.
Right.
There's things that you're fascinated by. That could be a positive
Yeah.
obsession. And then a negative one is something that you might be addicted
Yeah.
to, that you need, right? So I remember
Yeah.
when I was in acting class, amongst all the funny exercises we did, our coach often told us to deepen, not broaden. I think that's a part of the difference. I think when you have
Okay.
so-called a negative obsession, that's basically an addiction. So when you're addicted to something, you're always obsessed with something that
Mm.
that's out of your reach, that you constantly have to reach out and strive for, right? So like, so because it's constantly out of your reach, it comes to replace
Rudy,
the
you sure you don't want you, you sure you don't want to be a psychologist? Because this is I felt like we're getting some like good stuff. Like this is like I've never even heard anybody saying something like this, but this is really good. So okay, so it is out of reach. Why?
It's out of reach to you because you lack it inside of you. You lack this inside of you. So you have
Right.
to take it from an external source. So you're always reaching for it. And it's difficult to get. And that's why it's an addiction because you're always motivated to like do everything you can to whatever, to purchase it, to assimilate it, to put it inside of yourself. But because it doesn't sit there, because you were never born with it,
Right.
because there's a hole inside of you that you're always trying to fill. I think that is an
Gotcha.
addiction or a negative obsession.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a positive obsession is like a
Right. So
fascination. It's more like a deepening. Like you
yeah.
have something that you're fascinated by. And look, all of this is
Yeah.
just a feeling, right? Because culture doesn't really exist in a physical sense. It's just like a feeling that's inside of you.
Right.
So if that's always been
Yeah.
fulfilled, then you kind of
Right.
protect it, you mold it, you cherish it, you understand it more, and you go deeper and deeper into that feeling,
Right.
into that knowledge, into that wisdom, into
Wow.
that culture, whatever it is inside of you. So I guess that's
Yeah.
like if you're
Yeah.
obsessed with your own culture, you're fascinated by what you've already embodied. Whereas if you're obsessed
Right.
with a culture that you were never in tune with or feels like it's been stripped from you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's especially difficult for some, I think, for some Asian Americans, or like let's just use that as an umbrella term, Asian Americans, for like the Asian diaspora around the world, that because it
Yeah.
feels like it should be inside of you, but it feels hollow because
Mhm.
like, it's got that shape, you're left with that hole, you're left with that culture-shaped hole inside of you, so something's supposed to be there, but
Yeah.
it's empty, so you're constantly trying to find things to fill it with,
Yeah.
right? But that thing is hard to get if
Right. Right.
you're not actually living in the space where culture is born, which are the roots, like, which is the country, the nation, the people that have always embodied that culture that started it.
Wow, this is really deep. This is so funny because obviously I thought that we're gonna, do like a comedy thing, which is like funny, but I felt like now I'm like Mel Robbins, like this is really
We should do some
philosophical.
comedy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is, but okay. So I want to go a bit deeper on that because I felt like there's a lot of points that you said that is, so good, and like I've never heard any. Like I say psychology, I've never seen this in psychology. There's two kinds of obsession, right? So one is like positive with Asian, right? I used to live in Edmonton, unfortunately. And then like you have like a tiny little Chinatown and kind of these people like they drink bubble tea all together and since they're like 12 years old, right? They hang out with each other. They've known each other their entire life, right? And then they only hang out in this like bubble tea shop in Chinatown or something like that. That is like the kind of Asian I'm talking about. They live in that Asian bubble and they're like obsessed with being Asian in a way, like their friends are all Asian, or they don't really want to venture out, right? Then to your point, I felt like that's almost like a negative obsession because you're saying that actually this comes from a void that they try to fill with something that they actually don't have reach to on one side of the spectrum, while the other side of the spectrum is like these like self-hating ones that they want nothing to do with being Asian. They don't want to learn the culture. They don't want to learn the language. They don't want to look like that, right? They don't want to have any Asian friends or whatever. So like I felt like maybe these two are both negative actually, just because they are born from a wound and there is no like substance that actually fills it, but it's just a coping mechanism, which, to your point, feels more like an addiction than, like a real growth, right? Or like, something that is authentic.
Yeah, that does happen. I think it's really sad, but definitely, I don't think that that lasts forever. I think
Yeah.
eventually people just come to a healthy balance. I don't see anyone that can possibly live. It's a matter of like survival. It's literally the survival of your ego because like if nothing is aligned, if constantly you're denying yourself a part of your identity, even if you can recognize that look, I was born, I'm say my loyalties are tied to the nation that I was born in, not the nation that my parents were
Yeah.
born in or I inherited. Even if you tie yourself to that
Mhm.
place, you still have to accept like your place in that nation, right? You still have to accept how
Yeah.
like how people treat you. You have to accept yourself. You have to be okay with it. Even if you do that, you have to stop seeing people as people. If you just go, because I look Asian and I don't feel Asian, I'm going to have nothing at all to do with Asian people. That's like white supremacy talk. That's like so far to the other end of the
Yeah.
spectrum.
It's so funny because like a lot of these people, they would support like Black Lives Matter. But when Asian hate happened during COVID, like they don't say anything. It's just so funny because maybe it's just anecdotally, I know some people like that, where it's like the social signaling happens like you want to be like, oh, Me Too is good, oh, Black Lives Matters is good, like let's support all these movements. But when it comes down to Asian hate, it's like, and they're Asian, but then like maybe they don't want to be associated with it and it's not that popular anyway, they don't care. And it's just like, to me, that is so weird because it's like, if you are so at peace with who you are, which is your skin color, right? How you present to the world, how other people see you, shouldn't you care more about Asian hate than a lot of other things, right? Because that is who you are. That should be what you stand for in your heart if you care about yourself.
Yeah, I really have a lot of empathy for anyone who's struggling with those issues because I think everyone's just trying to do the best. Like if everyone was hating on me, and it does happen, and I've experienced it because I was Asian. If I was born with it, if I spent my whole life trying to reject that identity, and all of a sudden it's like anti-Asian hate, and people are hating on Asians even more, that's going to trigger a lot of trauma. Do you know what I mean? If you've been
Yeah.
born with this
Yeah.
thing that you've been trying to reject because you feel like everyone hates on it, and then all of a sudden, agents that's such a
Yeah.
difficult
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
to yeah,
And then
yes, you
externalized it.
yeah, it's very re-traumatizing, I would imagine. Yeah,
Yeah.
the identity question is there's a lot to be discussed there for sure.
Obviously, it sounds like you had a very difficult experience going around countries, but how did you make peace with all different fragmentations of who you are and then consolidate them?
I think difficult is a good word. I think difficult, challenging is all a good word,
Mm,
and challenging doesn't mean unsolvable, right?
mm,
I guess what's interesting is if you like you mentioned different Chinatowns in different places around the world, right? There's always a Chinatown. There's even a Chinatown in Edmonton. I mean, I've
yeah.
gone around. Edmonton is such a I feel like it's one of the probably if you think of Canada, you don't really think of xenophobia, but if you think of Edmonton, somehow xenophobia comes up quite a lot, right? I've had the pleasure one time of walking down the streets of Edmonton, holding hands with a girl, with my girlfriend at the time, and then a car would drive
Yeah.
by and say the F word, the gay pejorative, right? And call me that. And I was just like, what are you talking about? I literally have a living female that is with me right now. We're making contact. And you still I don't understand. So like there is something there in Edmonton that's quite
Yeah.
special. And maybe I don't know, maybe it's in the water. But even in Edmonton, my point is
I think
even
I
in
think there's
Edmonton,
rednecks. Yeah.
yeah. But even in Edmonton, there's a Chinatown. And I think in Chinese history, like us as a civilization, is just, we're very good at living with outsiders while preserving the Chinese culture, the Chinese civilization, right? Because, like, if you look at Chinese history,
Yeah.
China has been conquered so many times. The Qing dynasty, like the Manchurians conquered China, right? And we lived with them for hundreds of years, and everyone had to shave their heads differently and wear this long. Because my next role is I play someone in the Qing Dynasty, so I'm shaving my head and wearing this long queue.
Yeah.
It's so funny what's popular and what's not. Because in the West, like there's the hippie movement, the people with the top knots,
Yeah.
right? Because you know, in
Yeah.
like the Ming Dynasty, right before the Qing, like everyone loves Ming Chao, right? In
Yeah.
Ming Chao, everyone wore a top bun. And when I
I didn't
tell
know that.
people that my next role is Qing, and then they always think to like, cool. So you're gonna have one of those cool long top buns. I'm like, no, I'm gonna shave all of this bulb, and I'm gonna have a really long braid in the back that I might be able to wrap around my neck and wrap around my head.
Yeah.
As a Chinese nation, we've been conquered by the Mongols, we've been conquered by the Manchurians, constantly getting invaded, right? Even in the 1900s, the British tried to
Yeah.
make us Britain, you know, along with
Yeah.
the Opium Wars and bringing Christianity into China. The British, their plan was basically to make the Chinese people British as a British colony, then everything other British will follow. We'll be playing football, cricket, just like India, and then we'll all
Right.
just
Right.
automatically be Christians because all British people were Christians, right? But
They
Chinese
wanna
people have
conquer our
always
soul.
been, yeah, and Chinese people have always been very good at preserving the Chinese identity, no matter what roof we live under. Do you know what I mean? Like, because like
Yeah.
our conquerors, we
Yeah.
always turned the conquerors Chinese rather than become like when the Mongols came in, we didn't all just become Mongolian. The Mongols became Chinese.
Yeah.
The Manchurians came in, the Manchurians became Chinese, right? And that's why we have like more than
Yeah, yeah.
5,000 years of continuous history is because we weren't taken over and all of a sudden
Yeah.
China disappeared. China always remains.
Reminds me of the US. Oh, it's very much like a US, right? Everybody becomes American.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone becomes American. But the difference is, I think the difference here is that let's think of a hypothetical. If China doesn't exist, right? If right now somehow tomorrow we wake
Yeah.
up, the Chinese nation disappeared, the Chinese will still exist. Like if you think about it,
Mhm.
in Malaysia, in Singapore, in
Yeah.
anywhere in the
Yeah.
world, right? Where there's Chinese people, they speak Mandarin. They don't live in
Yeah.
China. Singaporeans definitely don't go, I'm from China, right? But they're Chinese. But they'll say I'm Chinese, right? But if we wake up
Yeah.
tomorrow
Yeah, yeah.
and America disappeared, there won't be any more Americans.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the difference
I mean, I
between a
think we
nation
just
that's the difference between a nation and a civilization, is that even if the nation disappears, if there's a
mhm.
civilization, the civilization continues because the culture continues. But if you're simply a
Yeah.
nation and the nation disappeared, then that's the end of that culture, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It it also probably has a lot to do with the histories and like what actually ties a nation together, right? Because let's just say if the culture is to make money, like capitalism, this is what tie people together. And if the land of opportunity dissolves, then people are not going to become from that nation anymore, right? Because the tie dissolves. But then if there's something else behind, so if you look at Jewish people, like what does that mean to be Jew, right? So like if there's something much deeper than something superficial and can be achieved in one place, then that has longevity. So what do you think is the thing that ties like Chinese people together, for example? Or like, what do you think that makes Chinese Chinese?
that's really interesting. I think a lot of things, but I think one obvious thing that we all know is how much of a communal unit Chinese people are. Like the way we think, the East versus West, communalism versus individualism, like not communism, but communalism. Like we all live
Yeah.
basically, I don't think there's a perfect system. I think it was Winston Churchill who said, like, democracy is the worst political system except for all the other ones that exists, right? Basically, it's the best of because
Mhm.
everything else is just worst. I think what he's missing is it's the best out of all the other ones, depending on the environment that we're living in. And I think right now the environment
Mm,
is
yeah.
changing, and then people are seeing that like liberal democracy, the way that the West practices it and the way that kind of America practices it with, you know, a lot of issues like the electoral college and the every 4 years there's a different thing coming and it's a complete reversal of everything that's gone before. How do you achieve a long-reaching vision if every 4 years you're going
Yeah.
under a total different revision? But in China,
Can't
the
even build a high
communalism.
speed rail.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. In China, the communalism is that look, the trade off is you sacrifice a lot of your personal wants and desires for the long
Yeah.
lasting unit as a whole. Like our units are built off of like the smallest unit is the family unit, not the individual, right? The family
Yeah.
unit and then, you know,
Yeah.
the village and then the nation, right? Whereas in
Yeah.
the West,
Yeah.
it's like everybody for themselves, and then hopefully
Yeah.
once you survival of the fittest and you reach the top and hopefully you have enough wealth to spread to the people that you hire to do your own thing so that they can have a spark of hope to reach new heights as well. Like everyone has that chance, and you can go so deep
Yeah.
into it, I think, because I think
It's
that's very addictive.
Yeah, honestly, I felt like it's a very interesting topic because it alludes to another thesis I want to talk about, and it's I felt there is a little bit of reversal of each one. So like I was just in Shanghai, I was there for about 2 months, and like all I saw was just so fascinating because I'm in my 30s and I just felt like as a Chinese person, you 30 years is like the 90 years for the rest of the world because we just experience so much change. And one change I find it's really interesting happening right now. People start to realize that like a lot of these, like for example, the communal unit that you're talking about, there is a traditional notion about family and extended family, etc., your relatives, and that should be your unit. But I felt like in China now, like people are starting to really question it. And then they
Yeah,
start to have like some very unconventional units, right? So for example, because women now have more economic power,
yeah,
a lot of them choose to not marry. A lot of them choose
yeah,
to be single mom by choice. A ton of them got divorced. Like they don't care. They don't want
yeah,
to get remarried. And maybe they live with their girlfriends, right? And then like instead
yeah,
of a husband or something like
yeah.
that. And then there's also so many robots that they're building. So like I
Yeah, yeah,
foresee
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
future where like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
we're all, yeah, like we're all only child. We gotta take care of our parents. Like it's a lot of
yeah, yeah,
work
yeah,
for one person. And
yeah,
so I just felt like, and then that sentiment is actually pushing people to want kids even less, right? Because they're just like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, like, you know, like
yeah,
I don't want to, I don't want to have to take care of my parents and take care of my kids, and
yeah,
or maybe let my kids go through the whole thing, right? So I
yeah,
just felt like this society is going through so much like invention, even just on like a social engineering level, and it's something that
yeah,
like the government is really hard for them to intervene as well because it's in the awareness of people. They're just
yeah,
like, I don't buy it anymore. You know, whatever
yeah,
you're selling, I'm not buying. And then you
man,
see like a little bit of reversal in the US where like people are going back into, you know, this like
traditional
communal culture
values.
because everybody's lonely. Yeah, and then they're like, you know, wanted to go back to the church and all these things because they realize
Yeah,
like there's a lot of things that's lacking in individualism. And it's like modernize the culture a little bit. And that actually gave me the next thesis I want to talk about is I felt like the Asian Americans are clinging to tradition that is more almost like a curating a museum of an Asian that no longer exists, right? Like all these traditions, like Asia, I felt like as a continent kind of like already is moving on from a lot of traditions that Asian Americans still like cling onto, while the FOBs are actually the modern one. What's your take on that?
I think it's a matter of integration. And I can see this with my own mum because she moved out of China in the 90s, and over 30 years, things have changed drastically. My goodness, she is so traditional. I think if she spoke to a modern Chinese person, they would think that she was from the turn of the 19th century because all her values, everything is just so like obstinate, closed-minded, and traditional
Mm,
because she was isolated. Like she moved onto an island and never evolved and never got to integrate with the rest of the society, with the rest of the culture. Whereas the modern China got to integrate, like it got to see advancements, it got to open up more and accept things from the West, from everywhere, really, and then integrate it into their own culture. And I'm totally not surprised by what you say about, you know, how the Chinese girls, the women are behaving. Like they're girl bossing, right? They're girl bossing because they're all like lady
yeah.
bosses. and they can make their own way because like I think everything has a cause and effect. And here you can see the integration because it's like, and by the way, I can just picture how much of a struggle right now the Chinese men are having. If there's an incel culture in North America, I can't even imagine the level of incelness in China because
Oh gosh.
when I remember when I was growing up,
Yeah.
like the boys were the prize. Like all of them were little princelings. You know what I mean? Like, like
That's
even
so funny.
even for myself,
Yeah.
I grew up with my cousin, who I just called my sister, right? She was just, I think, a couple of months older than me. So she was my bigger sister, and we spent all the time together. Like my aunt basically like raised me a lot of the time,
Yeah.
and we spent all the time together. And I was always favored over her. Like whatever things I
Mm.
did, whatever
Good for
fuck up
you. Good for you.
I did, whatever fuck ups I did, yeah, I'm admitting this right now as a confession. So, like whatever fuck ups I did, I would break a bowl. I would not finish my dinner. She would get the blame for it. You know, she would always get the blame for it because like 重男轻女, that was the definition of like of
Yeah.
sexism in China.
Not
And
surprised.
yeah, and now
Yeah.
naturally women are like, why the fuck do we have to take this shit? Like we don't need you. We can just invent an AI companion and have robots like satisfy all of our needs.
Yeah.
Which
It's so funny because like I just saw this gym. Yeah, sorry, I just saw this gym in China. It's like a
yeah,
Pilates, right? Pilates studio.
yeah,
And the reformer, you're gonna go down, right? Like, you're gonna go come up. They had these like male model pictures on the reformer. So like when you're going down, it's like you're touching, almost like you're touching these male models' muscle. They're
that's
using that
hilarious.
to motivate women
Yeah,
to work out harder. Right.
yeah,
So like we're not even talking about AI and whatever. We're talking about like young, good looking man,
yeah,
perhaps not as rich as women, right? Or just like younger and more like good looking and they treat them
yeah,
well. Like that's what they're looking for. So and then they're just like, why would I want to deal with like a guy who's 50, 60 years old? Yeah, sure, maybe they're like a billionaire, but like, oh,
yeah,
they're not gonna give me like emotional value. And I
yeah,
don't need that much money, right? I have enough. This is what
yeah,
I'm looking for. So they're
yeah.
thinking like a guy now.
But also the point is like there's all these side effects of like if you this is what I mean by integration. I think if you trace what happens in history, you can see that one thing leads to another, leads to another, and leads to another. And in this example, I think what happened is during the period in China when there was the one child policy, I think a lot of attention was obviously concentrated on one kid. And a lot of times, yeah, people wanted to have sons. But if you have a daughter and you raised your daughter, like that was your one child. So like that one child, your daughter
That's
got
true.
all the attention, got all the attention, all the
Yeah.
responsibilities. You obviously want her to achieve as much as other kids. So they were raised, these single daughters were raised to believe that yes, you can climb the highest ranks, you can become a CEO, you can innovate. And then you were kind of imbued with this traditionally very masculine set of values. Even what you
Yeah.
say with
Yeah.
Pilates, that's so masculine because like men, we just like I always joke that men just love like soft round things because we love bodies, we love the touch. We don't need um,
Yeah.
we don't need emotion to initiate intimacy. All we need
Emotion.
is flesh. Do you know what I mean? All we need is
Yeah.
flesh. And
Yeah.
then these women on the Pilates machines, yeah, all they need is some male flesh to motivate them, and that's a
The
very
side
that's a
the side
very
of it.
that's a very
Yeah.
masculine trait. So like all these women are bred to go, yeah, man, we can handle this too. Like we can man up as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
wonder that all these women in China, they're stepping up and they're going, why are we still like under the influence of a traditional patriarchy when we can just become the man and take care of business?
Long story short, because of this like dysfunctional structure, and a lot of people give up on love, right? So they have a term, and I'm pretty sure you know it. It's called like love brain. So it's
Yeah, yeah,
basically describing people who like fall into love and they think it's stupid.
yeah,
And
yeah,
honestly, I think it's a pity, right? Because love is such a beautiful thing. And I think that people mishandle love all the time and they don't know what love is. And that's a different matter. But then it's just that Chinese people don't see a lot of value in love because a lot of them don't know what love is. And they kind of give
Yeah.
up on that because they think like there's no tangible benefit I can get out of it. So like
Yeah.
everybody's now starting to think more like that. Right? Everybody's like kind of calculating and then scheming and be like, what can I get out of it? And it becomes like less of a collaborative culture. It's just
Yeah.
hyper competitive, and then the competition between men and women. And you're saying that the incel, yeah, it's real. I think that the only difference is that a lot of these men, like they're not as vocal, right, as like American guys. So when you start to talk to Chinese men, you
Yeah.
start to see the resentment underneath, right, and like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
contempt about this dynamics and also women. But then like they're not going to tell in your face, but you can
Yeah.
sense it. It's like deep
Yeah.
inside.
And also they have their own AI robotic girlfriend, so they're also taking care of them now. Which reminds me, I saw this really fascinating podcast. I don't know if you know this person by the name of Esther Perel, but she's a relationship expert and she talks a lot about female male
Yeah,
dynamics,
yeah,
sexual
yeah, yeah. I
dynamics,
know her.
couples and stuff.
Yeah,
And she had this one
yeah,
episode where she
yeah.
was doing therapy for this guy who had an AI girlfriend, right? So then what was really
Mm,
interesting is in it's couples therapy. So she also asked the AI questions, not just the guy. So it was like a couple therapy session. So she would
okay.
ask both the AI questions
Wow.
and him questions. And then there is this one question finally that she asked the guy, that was really, really revealing to me because she said, "Is there anything you miss about having a real girlfriend, living girlfriend?"
Right.
And the guys
Yeah.
finally said, "Yeah, sometimes I just miss the touch. Sometimes I miss just cuddling on the sofa while watching Netflix." And that's something that, like a voice software can never give you. So it's like, so
Hey, this is going to be solved very soon, right? We were actually talking to some of the companies. We might go there. They make these
yeah,
like humanoid. The
yeah.
skin is elastic. All these things. So
It'll
it's
it'll be really
expensive, but it's going to be
interesting.
solved very soon.
Yeah, because I've heard that humans can survive without sex, obviously, but we can't survive without touch. Like babies will die without touch, but like human adults can survive without sex, you know? There's asexual people everywhere, but they can't be alone without
Right.
touch.
Right.
And so
Wow.
when you asked, like, what do you think the Asian identity is? Like, what do you think is the thing that encapsulates, like, that differs Chinese people, Asians from the Western
Mm-hmm.
people? I think a part of it is pragmatism. I think we're like a very pragmatic
For sure.
people. We
Yeah.
do what we do what works, right? We do what gets the result, and we don't think
Yeah.
too much about the other aspects of it, which again comes from our communal background. Because, like, if you see a community, the difference between a Chinese community and a Western community is that in China, like from history on, the community is like you look at it as a machine. And then each individual was just a cog, like a gear in that machine. And then when the gear
Mm-hmm.
gets worn out, you replace it by another gear. So if you look at the gear, original gear as your parent, right? Your role as the new gear is just to replace the parent and perform the exact same function.
Right.
There is no hope to advance
Yeah.
yourself. And there's no hope, like it's like the emperor is the emperor. It's like Confucianism. There's like an order of things, right? And your role in life,
Yeah.
your fate is to perform your task as well as you can in that place that you're born into, right? Whereas in the
Yeah.
West, every single gear wants to be the CPU, right? Every single gear wants to go to the
Yeah.
top and become the CPU, so you can be the main character in the story. So it's a constantly like that's why there used
Yeah.
to be so much innovation coming out from the West, and then like the Chinese people, because we were pragmatists, we were fine with that system. But as soon as we saw that that system is not in competition with the Western system because they're innovating so much that they're outcompeting this status quo harmonious system, we started going, yeah, we've been living with foreigners all our lives. Like when we got conquered, we live with foreigners all the time. So we would invite foreigners like into the Chinese community so we could learn from them. Like the Chinese were always very open to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We do it until this happened with
Yeah.
technology, this happened with the automotives, this happened with film, that there's a
Yeah.
period in China where lots of collaboration occurred. They invited lots of people, Spielberg, Scorsese, all these people to come to China so that we can learn from them. But as soon as we learned what we needed to learn, we we didn't need them anymore. Like we had no emotional connection
Yeah.
to them. We didn't owe them anything. And then the Chinese would take what
Yeah.
they've learned and start innovating themselves. And that's how
Yeah.
BYD outperformed Tesla. Do you know what I mean? Like a long time ago,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
interviewed Elon
Yeah.
Musk, and Elon Musk and they asked Elon Musk about BYD, he would laugh and he would say, "Have you seen those cars? They're garbage." And then
Yeah.
now, if you step into a BYD car, they're better, they're cheaper, their battery is much better, they have more innovation than Teslas. And this is how like pragmatism works. There's no emotional ties
Right.
to what we need to do to
Emotional.
get the
Yeah.
results.
Yeah. This reminds me of an interview with Alexander Wan, the co-founder of Skill AI. And he said that China's not very good at inventing any new things, like new groundbreaking technology. But what they're really good at is that once they start to see something works or something has utility, and they start to come up with a lot of applications, right? So like they're really good at developing technology. They might not be the best at coming up with something very new. And this is like the pragmatism in that, right? Because you look at a
Yeah.
consumer tech or like any tech in China, like their use case and how fast they are able to adopt a piece of technology and make it useful, it's remarkable. And they have a population base for that too, because all these people need a
Yeah,
variety
we're
of
like a
applications
big lab.
from
And in
this. And
scientific research, all these research coming from China
yeah,
because our sample size is massive.
yeah, exactly. And the same thing with like medical care as well. Because like, if you look at this is just an observation, but also anecdotally, I think that the doctors in Singapore, even though they're highly educated, they got all the degrees and whatnot, they're like Western doctors got paid a lot, right? But because the amount of cases they have seen, it's just a fraction of like a case that you will see in India and China. If you're
Uh,
looking for, getting diagnosed for like some kind of like rare disease, Singapore is probably not your best bet, to get treated because you don't know anything about these diseases, right? But then if you're going
yeah.
to like India and China, chances are you can find like a really good doctor. So that detachment that you're mentioning about, that is definitely something that we're always taught to like be really rational, like and it's kind of funny because I felt like when I hang out with Chinese people, there's always like a fundamental optimism. It doesn't matter what they go through. They can be in jail or they can have like whatever, like shit happen to them. But I felt like fundamentally, these are really optimistic people. Like for
Um,
some reason, they don't get to too extreme. And I felt like
yeah.
it has something to do with that detachment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. But do you think they're thinking things will work out okay, or they're just thinking, well, this is life? Like, do you think it's optimism or acceptance? Do you think they're
Definitely
going this
acceptance more than, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's optimism or
Yeah.
just that they're just like, well, like in China, I remember the most common thing I heard when I asked what they wanted to do. Because if you ask an American, what do you want to do in life? They'll tell you about their dreams, right? They'll tell you like, I always wanted to be a
Yeah.
fireman. I always wanted to be a singer, famous. I always wanted to be a startup founder, whatever, change the world. And then in China, if you ask them, they'll go blank and then they'll just say like, well, what about, right?
我要
They'll
赚
just say
钱.
like,
I want to
就
make
是
more
活
money.
赚钱，like just live, right? So it's like
Yeah.
sometimes that like
Yeah.
optimism, it's just acceptance of like, well, I'm alive and this is what's happening right now. Do you know what I mean? Because like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you just live in a zone of stasis where everything is there's no super highs, there's no super lows, which might be preferable for some people that like, even if it's slow, you're just like, well, it's not so different than how I was living before. Do you know what I mean? So that, but if your
Yeah.
dream is that
The
you want to
the
achieve
ex
such heights, and then all of a sudden you have a dip, and you go, oh my
yeah.
God, that gap is so much bigger. And that's
You're of
devastating,
yeah.
which again, it's just
The
a trade-off.
expectations, right? Because
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a very good way to put it, like the radical acceptance, or like end of day, like know what your bottom line is. It's so funny because, like, I remember, I don't know whether it happened to you, but growing up, like, our teacher always asked us, like, what you wanted to be, like, when you're growing up, right? And then, like, I was just like, I think I just come up with some answers to please them, you know? Like, it's not
Yeah.
some, I would say, oh, I'll be an astronaut because I thought astronaut was cool. I don't think we ever internalized that, oh, this is my trip. You know, like how I envision, because I'm not American, but I envision, you know, if you're looking at American Idol, all these things, and they really have a dream. Like they're emotionally
Yeah.
invested, you know, into
Yeah.
that. For me, I'm just like, whatever other people are doing, you know, whatever's good, you know.
Yeah. Well,
So yeah, I
it's
didn't
because
really
I
invest in that
guarantee
dream.
you, no one has ever told you that someday you're gonna be president. You know, no
No, I
Chinese
mean, I
person.
can't be, right? That's just not
Yeah,
possible.
yeah, exactly. No Chinese person, no Chinese parent tells their kid that, right? Because it's
Yeah,
impossible,
yeah,
because it's
yeah, yeah. No,
stupid,
no, no,
impossible, and you wouldn't want to be anyway. But every single American
no.
parent, since the kid was just in its like a little diapers and baby shoes and baby shorts, they've been telling them that it's like it comes from somewhere. It's not that American kids are just born different and they're born to dream. It's that ever
Yeah,
since they were children, people have been
yeah.
telling them that you're going to be famous, you're going to be rich, you're going to be the president, you're going to control everything, you're going to get everything you need. That's how kids come up with these ideas because, like, your imagination just goes wild. I mean, kids, yeah, it's amazing that they can be everything. So, look, it's always just a trade-off. Like, for myself, I guess I've been raised in I lived in the West for so long that like I'm very much a romantic. Like I live an emotional life.
Yeah.
When I love, like I want to love deep. When I fall, I want to like I want to hurt. I want it to mean something. Do you know what I mean? I
Mhm.
don't just go through life
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
like, so be it. Do you know
Like
what
a
I mean?
zombie.
Like that. Yeah, 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 that
Yeah.
didn't work out. But it's all just a trade-off. It's just like the fact that like what can you accept in your life? Can you accept this life where there's a lot of waves and tumults, there's high highs and there's low lows and the lows hurt and the highs are blissful and ecstatic? Or do you just go through life going, this is coming toward me, I'm going to solve this, next problem. I'm going to solve that, next problem,
Mhm.
next problem, next problem. I'm going to have a family, a kid, so
Yeah.
that they can go continue to go solve these problems, right?
Yeah.
It's just a
Yeah,
choice, I think.
yeah, yeah. A lot of times I think Chinese people are extremely resilient. It's just that they're very reactive, right? Because their default is always the script, and then whatever
Yeah,
happens, like, you know, it's an exception to that script. You know, it's like I wanted to get a good job, stable job, right? Like stable job in the system, public sector, all these things is like, you know, considered to be the best in China. And then, you know, have kids maybe too, and like get a school district, condo, right? 学区房. You get cancer, right? Or like maybe, you know, you get divorced or something. That's considered to be exception to the rule. Like when they're
yeah,
making all these decisions, they're not thinking, oh, maybe I want to live next to the ocean. Maybe I wanted to find like a rock star. They don't think about any of that. And then the resilience really comes from the fact that like this happened, I just need to gotta deal with it instead of like this is
yeah,
my choice. And if it
yeah,
doesn't work out, I'll be responsible
yeah.
for it.
Yeah. And then when we do get that chance to really experience those extreme highs, right? Those big bumps in our dopamine. Like I don't think Chinese people know how to handle it. Like we've only known how to handle it from watching examples from other cultures. I don't know if this is still the case in China, but you know the term like 中国大妈, like back
Yeah.
then, around the 2010s, when all of a sudden there's lots of people whose real estate became so
Dancing on the
valuable
square.
that they had all that
Yeah, yeah,
money.
yeah, yeah.
And like the Jumbo Dama started wearing like Rick Owens, like high fashion, like you started getting all these bags and fur coats and stuff. But they're still walking around in like the sandal slippers because like they're Jumbo Dama, right? Their mentality hasn't changed, but they just know that this stuff means that they're rich, they're okay. So
Yeah.
because they've seen it from other examples from the US. So like I don't know we know how to
Yeah.
handle
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
experience what wealth is really like. You're just trying to imitate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, because like I think that a lot of our spirit is in the wealth building, nation building, community building. Like you don't
Yeah,
really have a self in it because like for whatever creative expression that you're talking about, ultimately you need to have a sense of self, and whatever express should be coming from that sense of self. And when you don't have it, then the only thing that you can have is a proxy for that. And so you start to imitate. So if you look broad in East Asian culture, and we're not talking about China anymore, but then you're just like talking about Chinese diaspora in Singapore, in other parts of China, Asia, they're also very similar in the sense where like they will not pick, for example, right, like a restaurant or a store to shop. They will pick the one with the longest line,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
that is like
They'll pick the
basically
one
a
exactly. That's what I was
validation.
gonna say. The one with the highest price or the longest line or like the one that yeah, exactly. Everyone else is going to. Yeah, the highest perceived value.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's either highest perceived value, which give them social currency, or it's the lowest economic value, right? Which give you like your best bang for the buck.
Yeah,
So
yes,
it's
yes,
really
yes,
hard to do, for
yes.
example, like the indie
Yes,
brand in
yes.
Asia because they don't value what makes indie, right? Which is the soul of the artisanship. They don't
there's no
value that.
coolness factor. There's no rebellious cool factor. There's no niche. And also what's niche in
Yeah.
China is already a few million people. So like there's not really a niche. You'll be able to
Yeah.
that's why I love China because like if you think of any activity, you'll find a pretty big following. Like China, I mean, people don't think of China when they think of like skateboarding or slacklining or these like obscure sports or
Yeah.
hobbies that people practice. But when you go to China, like if you go to any square, you'll
Right.
see these people just dancing on their skateboards like figure skaters, and they're so good that they're good enough to be sponsored because like Chinese people are such nerds, and there's so many Chinese people that even if something is niche,
Yeah.
there's a pretty big community, and then people will do it every single day until
Yeah.
they're like really good at it, like we're
Yeah.
pragmatists, like we practice until we're
Master it. Yeah.
perfect. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, like the I think they're really good at mastering any kind of skill set or tactical skill set, but one thing is if you need them to be spontaneous, if you need them to be like creating something, they're not really good at it because they like that's where they lack, right? And I like just my personal experience, for example, you can see the piano behind me and this keyboard. I played the keyboard since I was 3 years old, and I was just not very good at passing any exams. Like if there's a person who's watching me performing, I'm not really good at it because I've become very self-conscious. And I think that like the Chinese education system will tend to make very self-conscious people for some reason.
yeah,
We are so sensitive about being watched because we know we're going to be graded, right? Because
yeah,
everything is about grade. And then when you
yeah,
are always worried about being graded, you can't really make any mistakes. There's no margin
yeah,
for error. And if you
yeah,
don't have any margin for error, you can't have any creativity, Like it's just that's how it is. And then it's only after I started to have a bit sense of myself, like really that fundamental sense of confidence in who I am, I start to be better at piano.
yeah, yeah. It is weird that there's no safety net, sense of safety net in China, and maybe again, maybe that it comes from the era where there was a one-child policy because you only get one chance. You can't fail. Your parents can't let
Yeah.
you fail because there's only
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
There's only one chance. There's no backup.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have anyone else on the bench.
Yeah, yeah. Like I felt like in East Asian education system, and this is not just China but Korea and Japan, like if you're not top 1%, right? Like you're a loser. That there's this like binary kind of relationship to achievement. And so I guess my question is Asian versus North American education system, which system made functional adults as and is the Asian American who found themselves just a kid whose parents could afford to let them fail?
Mm, yeah, that's a good question. I think the function has to define by the environment. I think an Asian
Yeah.
education system produces someone who's functional in an Asian system, and a North American system produces someone who is functional in the North American system by looking at the social welfare. I did go through the traditional career route even when I was working in China. Like when I was in
Mm,
Beijing, I was still acting, I was still an actor. And so I didn't go through like
mm.
the
Yeah.
Gaokao process and then the university degree and then climbing the ladder, getting into certain companies and blah, 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 and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the social welfare is like in China. All I know is like a lot of the
Yeah.
social welfare in China comes from your relationships, especially to your family, right? So then if you're not doing something to give your family like guangrong,
Honor.
just to give them
Yeah.
pride, to live up their standard, to live up to their
Yeah.
standards, and to be able to actually contribute to the family as a whole. And in China, the family isn't just your family unit, it's like the extended family, right? So there's a lot of people to like you're
Yeah.
responsible beholden to. So then this is just me because like
Yeah.
please like correct me because I think you would know this better than me. Then that is your safety net. But in the West, there's a lot of safety nets like,
Yeah.
like social welfare, like there's a lot of things that you can apply to the government, food banks,
Yeah.
this and that you can get for free. Like you can like if
Yeah.
you're like in Vancouver, if you're addicted to drugs, there's all kinds of programs to even help you get those drugs, to get clean drugs. Do you know what I mean? To get to let you to help you
Yeah.
get those
Yeah.
drugs in a safe manner so you can at least survive and maybe slowly get off of those drugs in the hopes of,
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
in the West,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a baseline for functional. There's a big safety net
Yeah.
that you can fall into that you don't
I
have
I
to
I
be
also think
depending on the people that know you. Yeah.
right, 'cause I felt like you are also a little bit of an outlier in the Asian mentality. I think you went to medical school, like you wanna be a doctor, right, at some point.
Yeah,
That would be like
I
that
dropped out
path,
after 2
you
years.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you know what I mean? But then you obviously chose a less safe path, even for Asian American. Oh, and there's like another question I want to ask. And like I remember because I went to Gaokao. So I went through the whole jazz of like the
Yeah, yeah.
education system, right? I
Yeah.
even went to like the US education system. So I did so many fucking exams, and I can tell you the reason it wasn't necessarily about the objective social safety net. It wasn't
Yeah.
about the objective social status or social welfare. Because a lot of my friends, even these days in China, they're objectively rich already, right? They
Yeah.
have like really high net worth, or parents have really high
Yeah.
net worth. They're stressed as fuck. They call
Yeah,
themselves
yeah.
middle
Yeah, of course.
class,
Yeah.
while these people
Yeah.
are financially free already. It has nothing to do with the actual money. I think that they're really stressed about lagging behind their peers. They always want to be
Mhm.
better in terms of like their social status and wealth. They want to be well into 0.1%, right, the number
Yeah.
in their head. And if
Yeah.
they are not working towards that goal and be better than yesterday, they are not safe. That's like the final boss of their mental
Yeah.
jail. So I actually it took me a long time to get out of that mode myself, right? Because I
Yeah.
kept thinking I gotta be productive for society and I gotta be better than all these other people, as if like my whole life is a gigantic gaokao. So I
Yeah.
wonder, how did you have that mentality before? If you did, how do you break out of it? Did you not have it? Like your
You know,
relationship with risk, how come it's so much better, right, than these people?
that I look, I can't say that I escaped that mentality because I think you're pointing at something that is like truly at the fundamental of how we perceive a quality of life and happiness. And
Yeah,
they say comparison is the thief of joy, right? And it's not
yeah,
it's not your wealth isn't objective. It's just relative to the people that you know. So it's something as simple as I think maybe it's something as simple as we're not good at making new friends. We feel like, okay, like what is the fear? What is the fear of you falling behind the people you're comparing yourself with? Because like those are your competitors, but those are also the people that you interact with most often. And they're your friends.
yeah,
All your friends
yeah,
are
yeah,
like at around the same economical status. Do you know what I mean? And you feel like if
right,
you fall
yeah,
behind, then once you get kicked out of that social group, you lose your clubhouse membership, you lose your Porsche
yeah,
club membership, you lose your cars, you lose the ability to go to these fancy dinners or to travel on a group vacation to a super yacht or whatever. Then what are you going to do? Who are your
yeah,
friends? Then where does your happiness come from? How are you going
yeah,
to go out there and meet the hot women or the hot men if your MO is to
yeah,
buy their affection, to impress them with material things, with like
yeah,
your Lamborghini or whatever? Then how do you do that? It's why alcoholism is so hard to get out of because everything you associate with having fun involves a drink. Then if you don't have that drink, then what the hell are
mm,
you gonna do? So it's simply
yeah,
if you have
yeah.
all the rich friends and you're not good at making new poor friends and you don't think you can be, then how do you survive? Right? It's just the fear of being alone.
What
And I
these
guess for me,
people don't want to make poor friends. You know, they think it's a failure, right, for them to like go down the social ladder. Like that's how they
yeah,
think it is, right? Because
it's a failure for them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. Yeah, go
yeah,
on.
they're always a utility driven, right? If you're looking at how East Asian people do business, like they're not gonna waste their time being friends with you if you don't add any value to them. It's so transactional. For them to go down the chain and be like, let's have some poor friends who like don't add any value for me to advancing the society, they think they're wasting their time, right? So they're not gonna
Yeah,
be able to do that. But really of a self-fulfilling prophecy, as you said, right? Because that's kind of the
yeah.
only thing they know.
Yes, and I think what I don't think people are unable to make poor friends. I think it's just that's such a weird sentence. Unable to make poor friends. I think I think
But we all know what you mean.
I think I think we all can make all kinds of friends because, like, I think there's lots and lots of movies about someone who's rich, who's lost all their riches, and they have to start off from square one, and then they get all the poor people together, and they come up with something, and they struggle together, and they all become rich again. So, like, it depends on the environment and necessity.
Yeah.
Like, you see tons and tons of cases of like previously famous people who like have an addiction problem and then they fall out of the limelight and then years later you find them on the street with all these addicts and that they're friends with. So clearly people can make poor friends. It's just whether or not you're willing and you're taking the proactive step into doing it. Like for me, like Vancouver has become a kind of a crazy area in some places because we've decriminalized drugs
It
for
is.
the
It
past
is.
few years, right? So then,
Yeah.
like, I really make a proactive point to be able to make friends with anyone, even if it's a street person, is an addict. If like there's a basic human to human communication with them, and there's no like
Yeah.
comparison involved, because like because it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like these people don't care how many riches you have. Like people, if you put that out of the equation, if that's not your focus, then I think you're fine and you're risk taking. Like I think that
That's true.
this hierarchy is inherently in film as well. It's like if all your friends are A-list actors, you're gonna be afraid that you're not getting any jobs because you're like, what am I gonna talk about when someone asks me what my next project is?
Exactly.
You're gonna draw a blank. But if you have a gamut
Yeah.
of all like a
Yeah.
different friends around, then you don't have to face that question. It doesn't have to have that much impact. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the risk
Right.
taking.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think we're just social
Yeah.
creatures. And yes, I do think that inherently we're hierarchical creatures. Like we always want to be in a room just knowing where we are in the social ladder in that room. But
Yeah.
as long as we try to remember
Yeah.
that everyone in that room is a human being, at the end of the day, they're gonna eat and they're gonna have to shit and their shit still stinks, right? And everyone goes through embarrassing moments. Everyone has problems. Like we're just silly apes, you know, we're all disgusting. No matter how rich you are,
Yeah.
you're still gonna poop your pants
Yeah.
once in a while. So
Yeah.
I think that that kind
Yeah.
of stuff helps, knowing that you're still a person no matter what.
Yeah. Wow. Like, what a great way to end the conversation. No, I strongly recommend you getting a therapist license on the side as well, because I felt like it can help a lot of people.
Yo, cool.